Hi, lovies or chimmas. I'm Vanity. Welcome to Survivor Talks. I am so happy to be here. I am glad that you joined me. I love you all. I love you all. I love you all. All right, so I am your host. This is season 1, episode 1 of Survivor Talks. I'm gonna tell you what we're going to be doing over this in this season. Have different topics about trauma, but before we get too deep into this, I do want to let you know that if you feel triggered at any moment, step back, take a break, go get you. I always say, go get a cup of tea, go get some water, take a deep breath, and if you feel like you're able to, come back and join, right? Because sometimes these topics surrounding trauma can be re-triggering, and that is not the point here, okay? So here at Survivor Talks, why did I start this? Why am I doing Survivor Talks? Well, Revelations 12:10 through 11. It's a scripture the Lord has given me, and I'm going to read it. It says, "And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now is come salvation and strength and kingdom of our God in the power of his Christ. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accuseth them before our God day and night. And they overcome him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they love not their lives unto the death." Um, our testimony is powerful, okay? Our testimony unlocks locks to chains that we're bound by, right? Our testimony sets us free, and we all have a testimony. And at one point in our lives, we're going to find that place in that space where we can share our testimony. And that's what Survivor Talks is. It is a place where we share our testimonies. Different guests will be coming on here, and they will be sharing their testimony with you. And tonight, I'm actually going to share mine, right? Some know my testimony, some do not. I have not always shared every single detail of my testimony as being a survivor, and that's okay, right? Sometimes we share it in parts. That's okay, right? Um, Things can be so loaded, right? And we want to just make sure that when you are sharing your testimony, it may not always feel comfortable, but take your time with it, right? Take a deep breath and just relax. And if you feel like when you're sharing your story, stop for a second. Tell yourself that, hey, I'm safe. I'm not going to relive this thing. But when you're sharing your testimony, you're like, okay, this is for a purpose, right? When you share your testimony, you may be encouraging somebody else to share theirs. And that is why I share mine. I always say I'm a walk-in testimony, okay? Because I've been through so many different things ever since I was a child into my adulthood. And while that is very unfortunate, I would not change a thing. I find myself in a place where I say, I wouldn't change a thing, right? So I'm going to share my testimony with you today. And then in the episodes forward, sometimes I will have people come share theirs, right? It's to empower you. It is so you can learn something, right? What things that you can do moving forward in the future, right? Things you can teach your children or share with other people, right? Because we're breaking down trauma here, okay? So my testimony starts as when I was a little girl. My mom, she, got married, and I have siblings and stuff. And I was molested by my mom's ex-husband. I like to say ex-husband. it took me a while to stop saying stepfather, right? Because I didn't want to keep addressing him as that, because I feel like when you think about it, he didn't really play that role, right? And he didn't earn that role. So I was molested by my mom's ex-husband, right? As a child, I remember it was so intense. So many things happened. It started out with me being groomed. And what I mean by that is, with grooming, they kind of like butter you in, they reel you in, right? They're assessing your surroundings and environment, the situation, to prepare you for actual abuse, right? So my biological dad was not in my life. Okay. I think I met him like one time when I was like a baby. So growing up, I always struggled with feeling rejected and abandoned. Okay. My dad abandoned me, right? So he wasn't present. So as a little girl, I desired to have a dad. Okay. And when my mom's husband at the time came around, I was excited. I was like, I have a dad, that meant a lot to me. And he took advantage of that. Okay, we was in Georgia at the time. My life is so loaded. I had just moved to Georgia right before this all happened, because at the time I was before that I was living with family members. I was living with my grandfather and 5 male cousins. So I was a little tomboy and stuff. So anyway, I moved to Georgia, and then my life literally just took a turn. It took a turn for the worse at the moment. So he started grooming me. He started, I would say, he started grinding on me, right? And he would do it in a way that was so like you don't know what they're doing, because he would like tickle me, and you would think that he's just playing with you, but that's not the case, right? It made me feel really uncomfortable. I was like, what is this? He would literally grind his pelvic area into mine as he was tickling me. And the tickle part is to make it seem like, oh, okay, I'm just playing with her, right? And we know that's wrong, right? So, eventually, I told my mom, it was like, such and such did this. And my mom called the police, okay? After my mom called the police, they immediately went in, they locked up, they arrested my mom's husband, okay? And that made me sad. I didn't want to see him in jail. Like, I was wondering, like, what are you doing? Y'all are taking my dad away from me. I've wanted a dad for so long. Why are you taking him away? I just felt uncomfortable with this. I didn't understand what was going on. At the time, I was 11 years old, okay? 11, 12 years old. And then when these cases happen, right, there's a whole long process that happens. So we went to the police station. It was the DeKalb County in Georgia. And we went there, and I remember them asking me a bunch of questions. And I remember getting tired of being in there. And they kept asking me different things. And then I remember recanting my story. I do remember saying that it did not happen. I didn't want him to go to jail. There was all types of things. And then they let him go and he came back home. Okay. So this happened when I was around 11 years old again. Then, so he came back. We moved, and I know there's probably many questions, right? Because there was many questions I've held on to over the years. And one of the questions is, well, why was he allowed to come back to the house, right? And we'll dive into that later. Like I said, we tell testimonies in parts sometimes, and not every single detail. But anyway, he came back, and we moved, and that's when things really got bad. Okay, that is so. My mom, she used to, of course, go to work, and then she would go to school at night. Night school's a thing, y'all, for the working class, right? Trying to further your education, make a better future for your children, right? You go to school, you could only do it in the evening. You do what you got to do, right? And that's what she did. And her husband was home with us and my two younger siblings. And that is when he started molesting me. I mean, full-fledged, clothes off, all the time. He would wait for my mom to go to school. He would wait for her to be gone out the house. Now, why I never told my mom, we didn't really have, I would say, a close relationship, or I was really scared. So I used to get in trouble. I was loud but quiet at the same time. I remember being bullied in school or teased in school. So naturally, I would just hold things in. And then I had, one of those parents that, like they start yelling and stuff. They're always yelling. And, I believe that is transgenerational, right? Learned behavior. We do what we see growing up. That is a real thing. That is something that we will be talking about moving forward too. But when I got yelled at, it broke me. It made me feel uncomfortable. I was scared, right? So many different emotions going on. And I didn't tell her. I didn't tell my mom. So this was happening, right? It continued to happen. It didn't happen to my younger siblings. And I remember he told me if I told my mom, then I would be taken away from her. He knew to use that to keep me quiet. Okay. Because I had already lived with my grandfather and my cousins, and I lived with my aunt before. I was already out of the home previously, and I didn't want to leave her again. So I was quiet, and that's what he used, and that's what worked. Okay. That's what he told me, and I didn't say nothing. And this happened. Okay. So eventually I did tell. I got older. As I was getting older, I was really going down that route with as a tomboy. We ended up moving before I told. We ended up moving into a different place. My mom and her husband, they separated, and we moved into a new apartment and stuff, and away from him. And I was like dressing in my brother's clothes and everything, all types of things. I was just like totally lost, right? Even as a 13-year-old, because at this point I was 13 years old, and this had been happening over time, right? So what do we call this? This complex trauma. This is not a single traumatic event that has happened. This traumatic event has happened over and over and over again over time, right? A long period of time. So what's happening is as these traumatic experiences happening over time, It's literally killing me, even as a child, right? Because one of the things we will also talk about is trauma. What is it designed to do? Designed to kill, steal, and destroy you, literally. And that's what it was doing to me. And I didn't even realize it until later. So I eventually told my mom again, and we went to the hospital, and they did a safe kit, which is a sexual assault forensic exam. They did that. They, asked all the questions and stuff, and then the whole court case thing started, like all over again. So I had to go back through all the interviewing and stuff. And this time I did not recant or retract my story. And I remember letting them know, like, the first time it did happen. It was, I never really lied about it, didn't lie about it. It had always happened, and he had taken advantage of me. Okay. So after that, we ended up moving again. We moved to the state of Florida, and at this time, I was like getting ready to turn 14 years old. And man, I was just like out of it. I also remember, out of all of these years, like I finally had got in touch with my biological dad. And I think I talked to him like one time, and then he like disappeared, and I like totally lost my mind. I was angry. This is when I started running away from home. I started running away. I mean, I'd be like gone. And we ended up moving again. We ended up moving to Maryland. Okay. So we was just all over. We moved to Maryland. My mom, she did want to give me she wanted to get me help and just a fresh start and stuff. Fresh start did not work for me. Again, I became very defiant. All the things, the warning signs that people should look for when their child or a child is being abused, right, sexually. And I started running away. Me and my mom, we wasn't getting along. At this time, I was like 14 years old. Plus, like still the yelling was happening. I just really started to hate life. I was just like, why am I here? At age 14, and, sometimes we hear we may hear adults tell children, oh, you haven't been through anything. As adults, we really shouldn't say that to our youth. We shouldn't say that to a child, because you don't know what a child is going through or what they are experiencing, right? It's really sad. We shouldn't say that, because children go through a lot too, and they harbor a lot of emotions that are unsaid. And that's what I was doing. My outlet was journaling and listening to music. That's what I used to do all the time. That's like all I really did. And trying to go outside. So when we got to Maryland, one of the things that I was also doing when I was being molested, I would try to stay outside to play as long as possible. But eventually you have to come inside. So I felt like being outside was freedom for me. Okay. It was freedom. So I would stay outside. So I was running away. There was times when I love my mama, y'all, but there was times I like lose my keys and stuff, and I would have to wait for her to get home so she can let me in. You know how some parents are when you lose your keys? It's like, you better keep up with your key. I would lose my key, y'all. And I would miss when she would come home because I did not stay in front of the house. I would just go off into the neighborhood somewhere. But a lot of the time I would just go to my friend's house, and there's these two girls that I really loved being around and their mom. And I would just do my homework over there and stuff, and I would come back. It was kind of too late. It was just kind of like doing my own little thing. And eventually it was to the point where I would just stay out, and things just got so bad at home where I ended up going into foster care. They came, my mom had to call them because I kept running away. And they came and got me, right? When they came and got me, it was so crazy because I remember getting off the bus, and I wasn't going to my house. I was going to somebody else's house. Like I was staying with these people, a family friend. I was staying with them for about a week or two, maybe 3 weeks. It's crazy, right? And I remember I was getting off the bus headed to their house, and this lady came to me. She was like, "I need you to come with me." And y'all know stranger danger. I did not stranger danger that day. I got in the car. I don't know why I got in the car. I don't know why I didn't run. I kind of like knew better, but I don't know why I got in the car that day. But I got in the car, and I remember we was driving. She was like, she was taking me to my mom. And as we were on the highway, I said to her, I said, "We're not going to my mom, are we?" And then she was like, "No." And she told me who she was and stuff. Like she was taking me back to Department of Social Services, and that's when I first got placed into the foster care system. They put me in a shelter, and that's when my journey of foster care started when I was 14 years old. The thing about it is I rarely talk about like people know that I've been in foster care, but I don't talk about my foster care experience much. But I promise that I will. I am gonna start talking about that because foster care, y'all, my gosh, is literally ups and downs. But at the same time, like I said, I wouldn't change anything, right? I feel like while foster care was what's the word? While it was very daunting being in foster care, I am very thankful that I did go through foster care, right? And when I say I was in there, the system, I've been to the temporary shelters. I went to different shelters. I was in diagnostic centers. I went into the different group homes, short-term, long-term group homes. I was in independent living. I was in some of the foster homes. I was in some really crappy foster homes, and then I was in a really good one too. So I got to experience different type of people, all types of people, even thieves, y'all. I learned at a very young age. Don't get attached to materials. I learned that in foster care. I thank God for that. But so I just went all through care, and then eventually I got out as I got older because I had my son and stuff, and then I ended up on my own, right? So while I thought, okay, my sexual assault, the sexual abuse that I endured ends, like that's it. No, trauma was still waiting for me. My gosh, we call it the cycles of abuse. I think I've written about that before. It's a cycle that really needs to be broken. Okay. Even while I was in care, I was in a very, very unhealthy relationship. Okay. And I'm not gonna sit here and put it all on my boyfriend at the time, because I was unhealthy. I had experienced all this stuff growing up. Just, oh man, rejection, abandonment, the molestation, the screaming, all of these different things. And um man, I was unhealthy too. So we were in a very unhealthy relationship. And I remember when I first moved to DC. Um, I got into school after I had my son, which was in 2006. I was like, I think 2007, oh, no, 2006, I started college, and then I had this really good job. I moved back with my mom. Then I moved back out, and I moved into a shelter with my baby. I sure did. Um, but I had a plan. I was like, something's got to change. I went to the shelter. I already had a job interview lined up at another bank, and I was like, I'm was trying to start something new. I was trying to do something different. I started working. I saved my money, and it was hard, man. It was a hard journey, very very hard journey, and I ended up getting my very first apartment, and then I had got me another boyfriend, right? And that relationship was unhealthy as well. There's lots of phone calls to the police, cheating, all types of stuff, right? There was fighting in that one. I was very, very destructive at the time. I mean, breaking stuff. I was just so angry, so angry. And I really, really did not understand why at the time. I'm still young, I was like 19 years old. I was so angry. I was so hurt. And at this time, I was just like literally going through life aimlessly, right? But God was still with me. He was with me the whole entire time because your girl should have died. I could have been dead a long time ago, but God kept me. And I think back at those days, I'm like, I just thank God for that He kept me. And that don't mean that I didn't go through the hard stuff, and I brought a lot of hardship on myself too, right? So I went through that relationship. It was unhealthy. And then I ended up getting into another one, right? And I ended up going into domestic violence. That is the one. After when I got into that relationship, whew, man, I you know I think about that night, and I didn't want to go out that night. I wasn't too big on going to clubs, but I went out to the club back then. I went out that night, y'all. I was in the world end of it back then. Okay, I went out and I got on the back of this guy's motorcycle. Right, this was after the club let out, just going on a little innocent ride. I always been interested in motorcycles. This is how I actually started riding motorcycles too, by the way. And my life changed again, right? The cycle continued. It didn't continue right away, but it's just almost like I had a resting period of trauma experiences, right? Um, I remember things started out good, right? Things were going good with this guy. And I didn't know any better, right? I was still pretty young. I was probably like 23, 24 years old. They like to stay young and dumb. And this guy was 10 years older than me. Okay. Oh no, 10 or 11 years older than me. And I remember before I moved in with him, he was asking me all of these questions about my molestation and even the relationship with my mom. And it wasn't until later where I realized this man was preying on me. And I ain't talking about Pray, y'all. I'm talking about Prey. He was preying on me. And he was, again, it was that grooming situation. He was seeing how he can take advantage of me. He knew that I probably wasn't going to say anything, right? I was quiet with those types of things. So when we first, met, things were good. We were cool, right? And I met him right before I was going into my military career. I went into the military. I went to basic training. I went to tech school. I came back and I moved in with him. And I was like, okay, we're going to be roommates. We're going to save some money, right? And the first, man, there were so many red flags. So many things was wrong. First of all, this man was married. And he was separated. But guess what? Separated still means married. So he was a married man, y'all. And I was with being with a married man. I moved in with a married man. And I remember January, February of 2013. That is when my domestic violence started. Crazy, right? Very crazy. This is when he started like doing all types of things. And it started with like words, but then I remember when he started with he spit in my face. And that is disgusting. You hear people say, if you ever spit on me, I'll kill you, things like that. But yeah, this man spit in my face, right? It was, that house was crazy. A lot had happened in that house. And it was to the point where he almost killed me. Right? He choked me till I blacked out, passed out, whatever. Everything just went black. Right? I stopped the breathing. And then I remember him just beating on my chest. I just remember like I felt the hit and I just like started gasping for air. You know how like they tried to resuscitate you or something like that. I remember that. I don't know how long he was doing that because I was out. But I just remember things. It went black, and I didn't know that was going to happen that day. But I remember after that, he threw me into the shower, put me in cold water, like that was going to do something for me. And guess what? After that, he still had the nerve to put his hands on me, right? So much happened, so many different things. I'm not going to go into all the details. You don't need to hear all of that. And again, if you feel triggered, please step away and take a break. But this is my testimony. And there's a reason why I'm sharing these details is because these are the details that has kept me silent for so long. It is these intricate details that has prevented me from being who God called me to be. It is those details that has silenced me for such a long time. And I remember going to therapy, and for a long time, I was dealing with therapy for like just the domestic violence. I was in that for so long. It was so fresh, right? It made me so scared. It made me terrified of men. Worse than the sexual molestation from my mom's ex-husband. And then the bad thing about it also, it was all bad, but my son experienced it. When I say he experienced it, he witnessed this man putting his hands on me. He witnessed that. Sometimes it was to the point where he would try to like pull him off of me, right? Or, stand between us, and no child should ever have to experience that. I wrote my book, Life After Trauma, and I talk more about that situation. I talk about my son experiencing that, and that's always a chapter that just makes me so emotional because I just look at my one and only son that I have, and I'm just like, man, no No child should have to experience that. And I took him through that. So I remember over the years, I had to apologize to him, and I had to, find a way for my son to heal too. He may not have been physically abused or sexually molested, but he watched me be abused, and it's called secondhand trauma. He witnessed it, right? He witnessed trauma, physical abuse to somebody direct to him. That is a criteria in post-traumatic stress disorder, right? According to the DSM-5. And so over the years, I've apologized to him, my son, and I worked on just healing myself from that, because I remember when the Lord finally got us out of that. It was 2016. And this is a story for later too. We moved into our home. I finally was able to get out of the domestic violence situation. And God, I was like, Lord, I will go into a shelter, okay? Like, I don't know where we're going. I don't care. We'll go to the streets, me and my baby. And God is just a loving Father. He didn't put us on the streets. He put us in a house. I bought my first home. And I remember my son, he was praying for that, and God blessed us with it. I was in the world, but although I wasn't following God, I grew up in church. I knew that I could talk to him, but I didn't know. I didn't have that closeness, like that father-daughter relationship that I have with him now. I didn't have that then, right? But God was still with me. God was with us. So he put us in a home. And that's when my healing journey really, really began. And guess what? That did not feel good at all. Man, it took years, because here we are in 2025, and there's still little parts God wants to, deal with me with. But that's just God. He purges in us what does not belong. And I had to ask God to continuously to break my heart, break the stony places in my heart, because I had a hard heart. And like in my book, I talk about how I hated people. Like, I thought I was loving people. I didn't even know what love was. All of the trauma and abuse that I experienced, the sexual molestation, the domestic violence, just the unhealthy relationships, all of that, it created this girl because created this girl who hated people. I hated people. I didn't care about people. I didn't care about me. And that's what I talk about too, is it's like, because, the Bible, it talks about loving God first, and then you love your neighbor as yourself. Well, how do you love your neighbor if you don't love yourself? Right? I didn't know what love was. And God had to show me what that looked like. And that was a hard process, because, like I said, with my biological dad not being around, my mom's ex-husband coming, doing what he did to me, and then leaving, all I knew, and then also being separated from my mom, going through the foster care system, all I knew was abandonment and rejection. That's all I knew. So naturally, I didn't want people to really get close to me, but at the same time, I was desiring something. I didn't know what that something was. I was desiring love. I didn't know what that looked like. And then fear was attached to it. I had a fearful attachment. So I would back away from people. I would get in a relationship and stay in it if it was unhealthy, hanging on, and then just let it die, right? Unhealthy relationships, unhealthy friendships, right? So God had to do a work in me. And I'm truly thankful that, he showed me one day, and, God has a way of doing that. I was, I went away on a work trip when I was working in the federal government. And I remember being in a hotel room by myself. And, that's when God will get you when you by yourself. I was in the middle of nowhere. And I remember the Lord speaking to me. And the Lord said, I never left you. It was me who runs away from God all the time. And when he told me that, I just fell to the floor and boohoo cried. And I just wept so hard because God said he will never leave us nor forsake us. It was me. I would get close to God. I would try to get close to God, and then I would pull away, thinking that God will leave me, that God will reject me, that he will abandon me. But God is faithful to his promise, right? And all of that trauma that I experienced created me to be that way. And God had to deal with me in that area first. So I just went through so many different healing journeys, and that is part of my testimony. There's so much more, but I'm not going to get all into it. I'm going to save some of that for later. Now, I do want to do question of the day. So we have some people that has sent in lots of different questions regarding trauma. And while I have shared my testimony about the trauma that I have experienced, right? I want to answer some of the questions, or one of the questions related to trauma. So this is our Survivor Talks Q&A. One of the questions that I'm going to answer today. I'm going to answer this one. This is anonymous. It's, how did I become so free to share my story? Ooh, the Lord, when the Lord is healing your trauma, when he's healing all of the negative emotions attached to that from your experiences, as I was going through my healing process, the more I became free to share my story. So like, I remember when I first shared this story a few years ago, and I was just crying, but now I could smile, and I smile as I share this because I have a joy in me, because I've shared it many times. It's to the point where it doesn't, while some things may be hurtful, I know that I am free from the chains of trauma. I know that I'm no longer bound to that, and that's how I'm able to share. So going through my healing process, even though it hurt, is what freed me to be able to share the testimony. Like I read earlier in Revelation 12:10-11, it is our testimony that sets us free. It is our testimony that helps other people, because even our trauma experiences that we face, we go through those, and God brings us out of that. It's not for us to just be quiet. We have to share that, because we're empowering or encouraging somebody else to share theirs so they can get their healing too, right? We got to lock hands. We got to pull each other out. And that's part of my purpose, is to help other people out, right? They don't have to be bound to their trauma. Okay, so that's how I'm free. It's my healing. It is the Lord who has allowed me to open my mouth in a way where I'm not even bashing the people that abused me, right? Because I can sit here and I can do that, but I'm not, right? That's not the point, right? The point is for other people to be set free. So that is the question of the day. I want to thank you all for joining. I want to encourage you to share your testimony with somebody. It may be hard at first if you never shared it, but that's okay. It comes easier each time that you do it. If you need to write it down and read it, do that. I like to say, write it, speak it, believe it, right? Write it down, share it with somebody that you trust. Holding on to abuse, it just keeps you bound in chains. And that's not how God wants us to live, okay? So I encourage you to write down your testimony and share it with somebody. How can you connect with me? We will do Survivor Talks every Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. You can connect with me via email too at info@vanitydawson.com if you want to, ask me any questions. If you want to submit a question to talk about on the show. If you'd like to be a guest on the show and share your testimony, you can send me an email at info@vanitydawson.com. And until then, that's all I got for you. I will see you next Thursday. Love y'all.